The T20 World Cup needs a change. And before anyone panics, this is not an emotional rant. This is about integrity, it's about transparency, and it's about credibility. Because whether you love the tournament or not, there's a growing sense amongst fans, broadcasters, commentators, all the stakeholders really that there's the tournament. It doesn't feel entirely organic. That's the nicest way to put it. Now, let me be very clear from the start. The ICC is not being silly, they're not reckless, and they're not blind to commercial realities. The T20 World Cup is one of the biggest revenue generators in global cricket. According to the ICC's own published financial statements, event income is the backbone of the organization's earnings. In tournament years, revenues and surpluses spike significantly, and that money doesn't just sit in Dubai. It gets redistributed to member boards, it funds development, it sustains the global game, it just keeps things going. And under the ICC's current distribution model for the 2024 to 2027 cycle, the BCCI is projected to receive roughly 38.5% of the ICC's annual net earnings, in the region of $230 million per year. That tells you everything about where the financial gravity lies in world cricket. India's market power underpins the system. So when people say, why does this tournament feel structured to maximize certain fixtures? That question is not irrational. It's rooted in economics. Let's get into it. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. India versus Pakistan. It's the biggest bilateral fixture in cricket, possibly the biggest bilateral fixture in all sport. I would say almost certainly is, despite the fact that the rivalry's dropped off a bit, but that's not relevant to what we're doing here. That match drives global viewership numbers that dwarf most other cricket matches, and because of that, in recent editions of ICC tournaments, the format has effectively ensured that India and Pakistan meet at least once in the group stages. Now, the ICC would argue this is simply intelligent scheduling. Broadcasters need premium inventory, sponsors pay for global eyeballs. The tournament needs financial security. That's all true. No one's going to argue any of that. But here's the issue. When fans begin to feel that fixtures are engineered rather than earned, you create a perception problem. Even the ICC playing conditions in recent tournaments have included pre-seeded placements and contingency planning around specific teams reaching certain stages. That doesn't automatically mean manipulation, but it does reinforce the sense that commercial considerations sit very high in the format design. And that's the integrity question. A World Cup should feel like a clean sporting pyramid, not a television grid. Now, before anyone says, so what, sport is a business? Yes, it is. Sport is a business. But credibility is also a currency. If supporters, cricket fans, cricket lovers, begin to believe certain teams are structurally advantaged, even subtly, the competition's legitimacy takes a hit. So what's the solution? Because I'm not just going to point out a problem and not give a solution. Because removing a guaranteed India-Pakistan match has enormous financial consequences, I beg your pardon. You cannot just rip that fixture out of the tournament without replacing its economic value. And this is where my idea comes in. This is my proposal. Instead of structurally building India versus Pakistan into the World Cup format, the ICC should create a standalone ICC-run India-Pakistan T20 series in World Cup years. 3 matches, neutral venue, fixed global window, ICC sanctioned. Think of it as an ICC event, not a bilateral in the traditional sense. The revenue split could look something like this: 40% to India, 25% to Pakistan, 35% to the ICC. Obviously, you could negotiate those numbers. The numbers aren't really that important. The principle matters more than the exact percentages. India's revenue share would be reflective of its commercial weight. Pakistan would receive a meaningful return, and the ICC closes much of the financial gap that might arise if India aren't guaranteed multiple high-profile matches in the World Cup itself. Neutral venue helps politically. ICC ownership helps structurally. This becomes a premium standalone property rather than a structural feature of the World Cup format. Now, let me immediately acknowledge the counter arguments, because I know there are many and you're probably screaming them at your phone or your screen, whatever you're watching this on. First, the ICC cannot force bilateral cricket. That is correct. Political clearance is a real hurdle. Neutral venues don't automatically solve that. Government permissions would still be required, and there's no guarantee they would come. Second, broadcasters prefer certainty inside tournaments, not separate properties. That's also true. A World Cup offers cumulative narrative build-up. A standalone series, however lucrative, doesn't replicate the same multi-week advertising inventory. It's a business thing. I get it. Third, if India were eliminated early from a more open World Cup structure, the latter stages could suffer commercially. That's not hypothetical, that's reality. India's participation materially affects global broadcast value. And this brings us to the central tension: sporting purity versus financial stability. So let's talk format. Right now, the T20 World Cup structure across recent editions has included seeded groups, structured advancement pathways, and mechanisms that ensure top-ranked teams don't eliminate one another too early. Again, not conspiracy, just commercial prudence. But T20 is inherently volatile. One bad power play, one coin toss, one extraordinary over. A World Cup should reflect that unpredictability honestly, not cushion it. That doesn't mean chaos, by the way. It means transparency. If we expanded to a larger field, say 48 teams, stay with me, and introduced a clearer knockout structure, you'd get a bracket that fans can follow instinctively. Win and advance, lose and go home. Simple. In fact, mathematically, a 48-team knockout structure would involve 47 total matches. That's not dramatically more than some recent formats. In fact, I think it's less. Something to think about. But here are the legitimate concerns. And again, I will acknowledge them. I'm kind of arguing with myself here, but I just want to make a complete picture. T20 volatility makes single elimination brutal. A top-ranked side could be gone after one match. Purists would argue that's too random for a World Cup. Associates might travel across the world for a single game, which doesn't meaningfully grow the sport. Broadcasters, they hate uncertainty. Trust me, we had to do a lot of traveling that we didn't want to during this World Cup. Early exits from major markets create commercial instability, and giving top-ranked teams buys into later rounds could look elitist, the very perception we're trying to eliminate. These are all fair criticisms, all fair counter-arguments, which is why I'm not saying my model is perfect. What I am saying is this: the current system prioritizes predictability over purity, and that's understandable, but it comes at a cost. Other global sports have faced similar tensions. The NCAA tournament has play-in rounds before the main bracket. The UEFA Champions League runs qualifying phases that protect the top-ranked clubs early, so they don't get knocked out too quickly. FIFA's 48-team expansion guarantees group matches before knockouts. Every sport is trying to find that balance, inclusivity, competitive integrity, broadcast security, and cricket is no different. But the key difference is perception. If fans believe fixtures are designed to secure specific matchups, even if legally and structurally sound, trust starts to erode. It goes away. And once trust erodes, the tournament feels curated rather than contested. That's the word, contested. A World Cup should feel like something teams fight their way through, not something pre-shaped around them. So here's my core argument. Keep the commercial reality. Acknowledge India's market power. Create a premium ICC-owned India-Pakistan event that satisfies the economic ecosystem. Then redesign the T20 World Cup with sporting clarity as the primary principle, not fixture insurance. Maybe that's a 48-team structure, maybe not. Maybe it's a refined Super 8 model. Maybe it's a guarantee. It's guaranteed minimum matches for all the teams with transparent brackets beyond that. I don't know. There's multiple viable formats, but the objective should be the same. Restore the perception of competitive neutrality, because the ICC's financial statement shows how dependent the global cricket game is on event revenue, right? And the current distribution model shows how heavily weighted that ecosystem is towards one market. That's not criticism, that's fact. But facts also mean we need to protect credibility as fiercely as we protect income. Otherwise, the World Cup becomes a content schedule, not a competition. And cricket deserves better than that. That's my view anyway. That's what I think. What do you think? If you stayed this long, thank you so much. Please do give this video a like. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of my thoughts. And if you like my thoughts, please do give my channel a subscribe. Check out some of my other videos. And I shall see you soon.